Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of the By Steve Rowe podcast, a photography podcast that also looks at social media and travel. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So we're not going to be editing photos this time. We've already got 5 photos, my top 5 photos that I've took. And I'm going to be talking about composition and photography tips and tricks. So this came about because a friend of mine wanted me to do a podcast where I spoke about how I shoot and like what makes my photos so appealing to the audience. So I thought I'd give that a go and try and articulate how I did things as best I can. Just remember that I've only been doing photography now for like a year and exactly 4 months. Yeah, 4 months. I started photography back in February of last year when I started traveling around Asia. And since then I've been able to pick up like my own style and my own techniques in that time. And number one tip right off the bat, that is because I am shooting constantly, 3 times a week, 2-3 times a week. And obviously I've mentioned before, but when I was traveling around Asia, I was taking hundreds of photos every day for like 3 months. And so, when someone does that, what's that saying? Like, you put 10,000 hours into something, you become a master. Something like that. It was a TED talk, but still, it's just like doing something over and over again. You are bound to get better. And so that's my number one tip right off the bat. Shoot 2 to 3 times a week. I actually didn't do that last week because there was so much sports on and I just didn't have the time. It was just a one-off. With the World Cup coming up in June, I'm going to have to make sure I got time to shoot. But anyway, that's something I'm going to have to deal with. So, shouts out to Andy Burgess for this request because it is actually going to be a good podcast, I reckon. And I'm actually going to put Andy Burgess's social media account in the description because this guy is living through the stories he creates on Snapchat. And by that, I mean he is earning a living through Snapchat and through the way he works social media. Super interesting guy, definitely worth following and checking out his stuff because that's a whole thing that I've not even looked at yet, Snapchat and that. That's probably because my phone is pretty ancient now and too old and it just freezes all the time. I don't think I can make anything decent. So anyway, his link will be in the description. So let's go through these 5 photos. I'm going to go through them. Let's start off with this one. Now, so what makes a good photo? I think one of the most important reasons a photo becomes considered good. I'm already failing at articulating myself. Is because a good photo, it needs to tell a story to the viewer. Now, how do you do that? So when I'm shooting out in Seoul or whatever, it's just so busy. Like this weekend, I tried to shoot in a place called Hapjeong, which I've mentioned. It's an up and coming artistic area, very interesting streets, but I could not get any space to create a good photo. I usually try and get just one person in my photo, and I didn't check the time. I don't know how long I'm going to be rambling for on this one. You know what? It doesn't matter. Last one went to 35 minutes. So you need to try and get minimal people as possible and then allow the viewer themselves to create a story around that person. So here we've got one person and around this photo, viewers and people have like been able to create stories. I see comments on Instagram and Reddit like saying stories about this guy, and all he is just a guy. I don't know. This is just a candid shot. This was a guy who walked out of a restaurant and was walking into the building next door. That's all it is. So what I was doing to get this shot, I realized that I was in such a good area. Like this alley is perfect, right, for photography. And, I've always wanted to get a really good shot down here. And so I waited down this alley for ages and I almost got took out by an advertising board that got blown by the wind. The weather was so bad. It was like hurricane weather. And there was these advertising boards outside the shop and one just like flew off and smacked the wall right next to me. And, I was just like, I still got to stay here even if it's going to kill me to get this good shot. And eventually I did. And then it's all all about timing. So I could have got this guy a little bit off center and I don't think it would have looked as good. The reason I think this shot works so well as having just the sole one person, is that I've got it so his legs are apart just at the right time for that pink light to come all the way through, and also the black strip running down the middle. So it's kind of like adding some more interest to the photo. As well as that, I think umbrellas and things, an object of some kind, always adds interest to the photo. I do a lot of work with the rain and umbrellas, and it just kind of adds to my whole cyberpunk theme. And you know, when you're watching cyberpunk movies and TV series, they always play with the rain and the umbrellas. So it's good to get, for your style, you know, try and stick with it and then try and get a bit more creative with it. And of course, then it's also got my style. So over the previous months, I've steadily been growing my own unique style. Obviously, there's a lot of cyberpunk photographers out there, and you've got the likes of Liam Wong, who has a lot of purple in his photos. It's kind of just like a wash with just purple tones. And then you've got someone like F7, who creates almost like an animation through his photos. I'm really not sure how he does it, but it's just incredible, like how he turns his photos into something that looks straight out of an anime studio, well, not even Studio Ghibli, but some, you know, something like that. And so I've come with blue tones. Blue is my favorite color anyway, and it's also a strong color that features in Blade Runner. And then you know, I play around whether it's the pinks or the yellows. So start to try and develop your own style. And I think that is actually how you start to gain a lot more attraction to your photos, when people can see a common theme running throughout your Instagram. Let's move on to the next one. So this is a shot that I've chosen because it is more than one person. However, definitely we are focusing on just the two people, the couple in the center. Now, this photo, you could say the main attraction of it would be, of course, the fractal lenses. But if I was to just take a picture of an empty street, I don't think that this picture would be as interesting. Or if I took a picture of this street and all of the people were looking this way and that and not coming towards the camera, you know, I just don't think that would be as good. So I always like to try and get someone in the center of the frame walking towards or away from the camera. It just adds a focal point. And then what's good about the fractals is it has this focal point, but then it like flourishes into the top, and it's the whole top of the picture looks busy. Now, another reason why I think this photo might be good is the rule of thirds. Now, the rule of thirds is a very common theme in photography for people trying to say that to create a good photo. And so we've got the bottom third just here is clean, and that's going to be our main focal point for like characterization and story. And then we got the second third just here. We start to see the fractal lenses they're the most clearest at this point. And then we've got the top third here where everything is just crazy and mental. So three different sections in the photo, and all of them are slightly, the top two are slightly different, and the bottom one is definitely different. And so I think that is another thing to look at when you're taking good photos. Consider your composition. What is it being built up with? Try not to take photos. I try not to get a photo that's kind of just, you know, a boring composition where it's just like dead on, just straight. There's nothing different going throughout the photo. And it's going to be really hard to articulate myself because I'm really new to this still. But if you're taking something and it's just dead on, and it's, say like it's just a wall, yeah, you're just taking a picture of a wall, and it's kind of just taking up the whole frame, or it's kind of taking up like, kind of stops just here, you know. And the rest of this bit would be sky, and then this bit would be all wall. I think it would kind of just be like throwing the viewer off, because it's just not a clear separation within the rule of thirds. So that's something to consider. This picture here, this picture won an award, the Reddit's Photo of the Year award. What made this photo so attractive to everyone? So again, we've got one person in the shot. And I think the main thing with this photo and why it was so attractive to people was because that it is just so colorful, so vibrant. Again, we've got a lot of like nice yellow tones, which might actually be quite unusual for night photography, and it's definitely unusual in cyberpunk because I don't really see anyone playing with yellow tones. I don't do it too much now, but we've got the yellow tones. And you know, another good thing about this photo is these lines are kind of drawing us in. So the best thing, we've got a clean line all the way running through the girl, past the girl, and then we've got these lines, the yellows and blues, they're kind of angled down towards the center of the photo at the bottom, and so they're creating this line of vision fit to take your eye through and towards the back of the photo. And so we're getting the whole scope of the photo, and for composition wise, we're not getting stuck dead on straight. So say for example, all this wasn't here, but maybe the only interesting thing was the girl, then there's nothing else to look at. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing else that's drawing our eye further. However, we're having something lead our eye all throughout the photo, and it's just making you take in the whole photo and appreciate it. And I think that's when people start to really fall in love with a photo, and they take the whole thing in. So again, composition wise, we're right behind the girl. She's walking away from the camera, which again also leads our eye because naturally we want to see where she's going. And then again, so many people were creating stories about this particular person, and they were saying like all coming up with sort of sci-fi theories that she was an assassin and all of this. Who knows? But that's the kind of thing people are going to start thinking if you allow them to through your composition. Let's move on. Sorry about the white border on this one. I'll zoom in. Why is this photo one of my favorite of all times? Now, I think this might be due to exposure and just the whole lighting of the photo. I just think I don't know. I just think for me, it's perfect. We have got clear definition in the rain, which is usually quite hard to capture. If you want to be doing that, you want to have a quick shutter speed. The Sony allows me to actually have a quick shutter speed at nighttime and not sacrifice any of the quality of the image and still get light all the way through. Another good thing about this photo, you could consider that it's also part of the rule of thirds. We've got this section down here with the couple eating, and then we're moving up into the other section which contains the waitress and the window and the lighting just here. And then the top third is a really nice looking sign, which apparently I'm told it means one door, this symbol here. And you know, so we start to build up the picture, we go all the way through. Another good thing about this picture, even though it is dead on, because we've got the glass door and because we've got this window open, the viewer and the eye is taken all the way through to the back of the photo. Okay. What else? The lighting and my editing technique of doing split toning. So we've got split toning is where you've got two color themes running throughout. So I've got like nice warm colors. We've got the orange and we've got the red, and that's contrasted heavily with the cool tones of the blues that are kind of running all the way around the outside. And so that's just a nice color palette that really builds up a nice composition and a nice photo. So that's another thing to consider. You want to consider for your editing the contrast of colors, the darks to the lights, and then other colors. If you want to make your photos colorful, we're going to be going for the warmer colors and the cool colors, and together they can create quite a nice combination. If you're going to be doing black and white photography, I always find that before, I never do black and white photography now myself, but before I started to realize that black and white photography I think it's more attractive when the blacks and the whites are far more contrasted. If it's not that separated and it's kind of just like all these gray tones, I just don't think it's that eye-catching. I think the most striking color way for a black and white photo would be to have a clear distinction between your blacks and your whites. So that's something to consider, but I'm probably not the best person to ask about that. Final photo. Okay. So this photo here, I think the particular reason why I really love this photo is because I'm hanging out of a bus window, and the bus direction is leading us all the way into the photo. And the thing is, it's doing it subtly. It's not immediately apparent, but because of the angle and the shape that the bus is giving us, it's almost like an arrow look. And it's a very strange shape. The more you look at it, the more like pronounced it gets, and the more it just looks like an arrow that's telling us to look this way. And obviously, I can't zoom out, what's going on? Obviously, this is a very attractive looking building. We've got really bright blue lights, and especially we are giving added interest to the weather, I call them weathermen, to the men with the umbrellas. And obviously then as well, we've got the tail lights reflecting down into the ground. The best thing to do when you're shooting in rain is just to shoot with the lights, because it's just, I love how tail lights look in the road. They kind of look like they're underneath the car and supporting them. It's just a strange angle that you get given. And when we've got the reflection as well from the top of this building, it's running all the way throughout the photo. So for this particular picture, I think what we're doing is we're being given help and assistance looking throughout this photo. And even though this blocks off the bus, even though it blocks off the photo, I still think due to the angle and due to the shape, it leads us all the way in. Okay. And then of course the angle of the building, it's not dead on. It's at a nice, interesting angle. You kind of want to make sure that you're becoming creative and, just try and look at things differently and think, if I'm dead on with a building, if I'm just straight onto it, is it interesting enough? Try to start taking a step to the left, take a step to the right, and then, just start to look at the building from each and every angle. And you'll start to see that composition-wise, it starts to become a bit more attractive because it's just given added interest. You see here, we've got the blue wall, but we've got a really heavy contrast with the black wall beside it, but it's being lit up with yellow and white lights. And so I just think that's another reason why the picture might have worked so well. And again, the power of thirds. Bottom third here, we've got nice reflections and nice tail lights going on. In the middle third, we've got the cars and the bridge. And then in the top third, we've got the lights and the wall, with the umbrella man. So that's I think that's why this photo works particularly well. And again, it shows off my style, my editing technique. I like to think soon as, if you do see one of my photos randomly and it wouldn't be on my Instagram, say you just see it randomly on the internet, I'd like to start to think that people think, that looks like Steve Rowe's work. So that's what I'm trying to do, build a style that is definitely noticeable. So that's something that you really should consider. I also think start to experiment with different styles. I was experimenting with travel, then I experimented with portraiture, then experimented with events photography, and then I found myself in South Korea, and I thought the best thing for my environment would be to do street photography, and then just start really practicing at that. And then that's what you want to become known for, is just one style. If you start trying to do all kinds of different styles of photography and uploading them to your Instagram, I think that's when people find it hard to relate to your feed, because they might like a style that you do every now and then, but they don't quite vibe with the majority of your work. So try and stick to one style. Think about the places that you live and the places that you visit. What's the recurring theme throughout, and stick with that as a style for your photography. Like I live in South Korea, and a majority of the area where I live is city. If I was to try and do landscape photography, nature photography, I'm going to find it really tough. I'm going to have to be traveling all over the place, and I don't think I'd be able to give as much content as I can when living in a city and doing city and street photography. So think about that. And I think that is it. So just to recap, have a look at the power of thirds in your photos and start to research into that and consider that when you're shooting and lining up a composition. And then as you keep practicing it, it honestly becomes second nature. Like I really rarely think about a composition. I just shoot. And I think it's because I've been shooting so often, it's now ingrained into like a muscle memory of just lining up a photo. I already immediately know what I want. And then the other thing is trying to add characterization and story into your photo. And you can do that by, not every photo has story. I mean, look at this photo. It is just a picture of a wall and it is just a picture of some cars. Does it give a story? Maybe for the more creative and imaginative people out there, but for me, it's just an attractive looking photo. But then obviously we come and look at this one. Oh no, let's try that one again. We come and look at this one, and we are given a story. We know we've got one person that we're looking at, and we can start to build all the crazy stories about her being some assassin like the people were saying on the internet. You know, that's what you want you to do. We want you to build your imagination around a photo. And and then the last thing, just try and develop your own style. That takes time. You can't just do that overnight. You really got to just keep whittling away down at Lightroom, trying to find something that might be unique. Use other people for inspiration and try and copy one of their styles, but then start to edit and tweak it. And then over time, you start to build your own ideas and your own style. Okay. So I think that is the end of the podcast. I've just written up last week's podcast as a Medium blog, so if you want to refer back to that for the notes, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And in fact, once I started writing, I think I was able to get my ideas out in a much clearer way. This whole podcasting thing is still new to me, and so I'm still trying, still learning how to actually articulate myself in a 30-minute window and try and not mess up, or not that many times at least. So I think I've progressed a lot since podcast 1. I had a lot of stuttering going on in podcast 1. Now my stuttering is at a minimum. There you go, still stuttering. What else have we got? This podcast will also be written up into a Medium blog. No shoots planned yet this week, so I've got to get on top of that. But if you do want to support the podcast and see future things coming up, please hit that subscribe button. The channel's starting to grow nicely now. It'll be nice to reach 100 subs by podcast 10. That would be pretty cool. And also drop a like, drop a comment, because that just helps visibility for the video and helps it get up there in the feeds of other people. And also head over to www.buysteverowe.com, where you can buy pretty much anything with my photos on it. You know what? Actually, recently, just a side note, I've been thinking about getting this particular picture as a tattoo. Obviously, I wouldn't have all of these buildings involved because, I don't really want this Nori Bang on my arm. And I don't really want, what's that? Beggy. What's that? I think that's just some food restaurant. Or pizza. What's this say right at the back? Pizza Piz? What's that? Pizza please? Pizza please, I think it's supposed to say. I don't want that on my arm. What I'm thinking about is getting this, the girl, and then these yellow and blue lines as a tattoo. Who knows? This is an idea that's been playing in my mind more and more. It would be pretty cool to get my own work tattooed on my arm forever. So that's a thought. I'm not doing tattoos, and you cannot get tattoos at buysteverowe.com, but you can get phone cases, you can get prints, posters, stickers, tapestries, t-shirts, and also skirts, which is a weird one, and I never usually include them, but Redbubble, they do print my photo onto a skirt. Not sure if it's very attractive out there. I don't know. I don't wear skirts, but I don't think I would choose these kinds of skirts if I did. And what else can you do? Instagram.com/SteveRowe_ to be up to date with my latest posts. All right, hope you enjoyed that one, something a little bit different, and I'll be back next week editing 5 photos from this week's shoots. Okay, take care now, bye-bye.